it has been a couple of weeks. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I am finally back in New Orleans. I've been back since the 25th. And let me tell you, it was such an adjustment coming back. I was not expecting that at all. This isn't the first time I have left the city to visit family in the Carolinas, but it's definitely the longest I have been gone. I think before this, the longest was about 3 weeks. That would have been around April, May 2020. But at that time, I wasn't technically living in the city. I wasn't really living anywhere. When I first moved down to New Orleans, I was living in the Kill, Mississippi, a little town just east of the state line. And I was there for about 2.5 months, and then pandemic happened. I stayed in an apartment by myself. I had friends who were subleasing an apartment. They ended up moving away, and I stayed in their apartment for the remainder of that lease for about a month. And after that is when I found my place in New Orleans with roommates, and I paid first month's rent. And then I went home for a couple of weeks. I had no furniture. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have a place to work from home. I didn't really have anything. So I felt like it was a good time to go visit family now that I had established roots in the city, if that makes sense. So I felt comfortable leaving and coming back. And there was no point in me really staying because I had no means to work from home. I had nowhere to sleep. So I could at least go back home. My mom could help me adjust with working from home. And then I could figure out what furniture looked like. And I was in Charlotte at that point for about 3 weeks. And I remember coming home after that and feeling apprehensive about whether or not this was the place for me to be. Should I even come back to New Orleans? Am I making the right decision? Because I knew I was coming back to a city by myself. I initially had friends in the city. When I moved down, things changed very quickly. I had friends who moved away, friends who were still in Mississippi, so I would be the only one in New Orleans by myself, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. But I remember crossing the bridge over Lake Pontchartrain, seeing the city line, and immediately feeling the sense of peace, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm home now. But this time around, when I came back, I was away maybe a week longer than last time, and coming back, it was like I felt like I kept having to pinch myself and just remind myself, I'm here. This is New Orleans. It's like everything looked familiar, but I didn't recognize it. Does that make sense? It took me a while to get reacclimated back to living in New Orleans. There's a big difference between living in the Carolinas and living in New Orleans, and I had to kind of readjust my brain to living back here. And last week was super busy with my job. It was the end of the month, so there wasn't really a lot of time to do much of anything. But here we are. This is tough, y'all. Social media, trying to do social media and a full-time job, it is tough because everything is time consuming. So it's finding time to do all the extra stuff I enjoy doing, plus the job that I do like. And on top of that, just living normal life and figuring out all the stuff in between. I'm actually going on vacation next week. It's my first adult vacation. When I say adult, I mean it's the first time I've been on a vacation since I turned 18 years of age. I'm going to Orlando, Florida. I'll be at Universal Studios and Islands of Adventures for 5 days, and I am so excited. I love Universal Studios. I'm a big movie buff, so that place is heaven for me. I'm going to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter for the first time. And that space wasn't, that piece of the park didn't even exist. I don't think it was even a thought the last time I was in Universal Studios. So it's been a very long time. And I'm going to Hollywood Horror Nights. Can't wait. I love Halloween. I love spooky things. I love scary things. So super excited. And yeah, now I got to figure out, what does a podcast look like while I'm on vacation? All of this is new. I'm still figuring out. I'm still learning. You'd think I'd have it down packed by now, but no. I still don't know what I'm doing. So I want to kind of get semi-personal again. just to kind of talk about what's going on in my life right now and just maybe someone can relate or connect to it. So let's get started. So I don't talk about this ever. This is not something that I share with people. If you know me, you probably don't know this, or maybe you've thought it. I've hinted, or you may have made suggestions, or you may have said something, and I probably thought in the background, well, if you just dig a little bit deeper, you'll hit gold. But I'm definitely not going to help you get there. I'm very protective of this because this plays a crucial role in my identity. So, beginning of 2021, I made a couple of goals. One of them was to travel more, completely failed on that one. The second one was to lose weight, which I am losing weight. I'm down about 60-ish pounds. And the third one was to complete NaNoWriMo. What is NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo is kind of an abbreviation or an acronym for National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo. And the goal is, there's a website you can go to. It's like nanowrimo.com, nanowrimo.org. I'll put the link in the description for the podcast. And you go set up an account, start a project. And the goal is in the month of November to write 50,000 words. Now, whether that is for a novel, poetry, essays, a self-help book, nonfiction, what have you, whatever. The goal is 50,000 words. The goal isn't to complete the project. The goal is just the 50,000 words. And this will be my third time attempting. And I haven't completed it ever. So the first time I tried was 2016. I think I got about halfway through. And then 2018, I tried again and I didn't even make a dent. It was embarrassing. I had an idea and I gave up on it. And this time around, I decided I'm going to do it and I'm going to complete it. And I want to make sure I get started early. And I almost forgot. But then October 1st was Friday. And I was like, hold up, wait, NaNoWriMo prep. I got to start prepping for NaNoWriMo. So went to the website, made sure my account was all up to date, and got myself set up to start prepping for NaNoWriMo. Now, if you write, prep looks different for everyone. Some people do a whole outline. Me, I don't outline very well. It's a very in-depth, I don't like talking about it. The process is very personal. And I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get into that later. But I kind of got started. I had an idea in my head what I wanted to do. I kind of start with a character and I worked my way out. And I haven't written in years. But it was so interesting to me how quickly I got back into the rhythm. Let me just start off by saying I've been writing for as long as I can remember, literally as long as I can remember. When I was young, I would take songs I heard on the radio and I would rewrite the lyrics and perform them in my living room. I'm sure my mom will hear this one. I don't know if she knows that. I would write fan fiction. My mom used to take me to the movies all the time. I would go to the movies. I used to go to the movies by myself a lot, at 8, 9 years old. I was a latchkey kid, single parent home. So the movies was my babysitter. And I would fall in love with these characters. And then I would write stories about them in their own little universe. And then, staple my pages together and pretend it was a book. I'd say 5th grade to the end of high school, I got into writing poetry. That was big for me. I enjoyed writing assignments in school, essays, any short stories that we had to write. Vocabulary was some of my favorite things to do. And I don't know if some people know what I'm talking about, but if you've ever had like a vocabulary quiz or something in class, a lot of times our teachers would assign us that we would have to write a story using these vocabulary words. And I usually went all out, not because I was that extra of a kid, but because I loved writing and I loved creating stories. So my teacher was expecting, maybe 2 pages written. I gave her like 6 pages typed, single space, just wrote a whole freaking short story. And I loved it. Any kind of creative writing class or creative writing assignment. College is when I got into short stories and writing screenplays, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then after college, life just took a turn, not a good turn. And I kind of fell off for a little bit. I did end up taking a creative writing class at a community college in 2011. And I think honestly, that was the last time I really wrote. Now, if you go to my YouTube channel, there was a little short film I did just goofing around. I had nothing else to do. I'm one of those people, once I have an idea, I have to run with it. And I had an idea, so I ran with it. It's called Mad. I did write the screenplay for that. I kind of just interwove pieces of the movie Psycho in this screenplay. So, yeah, I really haven't written consistently. And it's interesting because writing isn't just something that I do, it's who I am. Eat, sleep, breathe, write. It's ingrained in me from a very young age. It's not something that I just happened to discover, in my adolescence. It's something I've always done. And I abandoned it in high school because I was angry, and I will tell you why. So, high school is when people are figuring out who they are, what they want to do with the rest of their lives. People are going on these great self-discovery journeys and these identity crises and trying to figure out what their niche is. They're joining different clubs. They're trying to decide, what do I want to major in college? Side note to any high school seniors, trying to figure out what you want to major in, you don't need to figure that out right now. It's okay to stay undecided until you find your niche, okay? Don't let anyone try to pressure you into deciding what you want to do for the rest of your life at 17 years old, okay? You're still figuring out a skincare routine. You don't need to figure out the career for the next 40 years of your life. But I digress. Going back to what I was saying. So yeah, I was seeing everyone going on these self-discovery journeys, and I was a little jealous because I knew I would never go on a self-discovery journey because it was unnecessary, because my plan was already written. It was already decided. I knew from a very early age that writing was what I was meant to do. And I hated that. I hated that it was already decided for me and I didn't get a choice. So me being the stubborn fool that I am, I decided to rebel against that. I took a class my senior year of high school called Film is Literature, and basically it was a film class. We watched films and we would break them down. We learned about, symbolism, different film techniques, history, and all that jazz. And I decided from taking that class that I wanted to work in the film industry. I wanted to study film production. And that's what I did. I went to UNC Greensboro. They have, I think they call it media studies now. When I started, it was called broadcasting and cinema. And it was film, television, and radio. And so that's what I studied in college with the hopes of working on a film set one day. My concentration was film production. Yeah, I think my sophomore year of college, and I realized that I hated setting up lights and I really didn't want to work on a film set. So that was disappointing, realizing that, as much as I enjoy the behind the scenes of it all, actually, setting up, it just wasn't for me. And I took a class because, there are certain classes we were required to take for our major, no matter your concentration. One of them was media writing. So I took a class called media writing where I learned to write for radio, television, and film. So I learned how to write screenplays, which is fairly easy, but a little difficult depending on your writing background. If you are not familiar with writing in general, screenplay writing is probably not going to be that hard for you. But for someone who wrote fiction a lot, it was an interesting transition going from active voice to passive voice and going back and forth and, changing my perspective and the way I wrote and the way I expressed what I wanted to say. It was interesting, but I fell in love with it and realized that I found myself right back where I started with writing. And I switched my concentration to media writing and with a concentration in screenplays. I ended up taking 2 screenplay classes, well, technically 3. The first one was kind of like an introductory film writing class. We had two projects the entire semester, two short films that we had to write. And one of them was an adaptation, the other one was an original. And then the second class I took was split up over 2 semesters. So that's why I said 2 or 3. And that one was just one project the entire semester. That was it. And those were some of the most fun classes. Every class was a table read. I actually remember the very first screenwriting class I took. I was working on, it was the second half of the semester, and I was working on the original screenplay. And this was a story that was very near and dear to my heart because these are characters that I'd been living with for a couple of years at that point. And I decided I wanted to kind of take an old short story that I had written and turn it into a screenplay. And we had one class, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to go. So I made the decision at the last minute to just go ahead and go to class. And I'm kind of glad I did. I'd forgotten that we were going to have a special guest in that class, and it was an actor. And I actually recognized him. He was in an episode of Law and Order SVU. I think the episode is from either season 1 or 2, and I want to say it's called Hysteria. He was the bad guy. He ended up being the killer in the episode. He played a cop who was killing prostitutes, and I think the episode is called Hysteria. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I recognized him right away. And he was reading our screenplays, and he read mine, and it was some of the most encouraging things I'd ever heard. You know, this person who is a professional who deals with what I'm trying to do on a regular basis, tell me that he loved not just what I had written, but the way that I wrote. And why I didn't take that as a sign from God that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, we'll never know, because I continued to rebel against my purpose for years, and I suffered for it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. We all remember the Robert Frost poem, correct? The Road Not Taken, Two Roads Diverge in Yellowwood, and Sorry I Could Not Travel Both. Yeah, I feel like that's where my life was, you know, end of senior year, beginning of college. I had two options. I could take the road that was already paved, or I could forge my own. And I decided I wanted to forge my own because I wanted control. I wanted to control the outcome of my life. I was angry that I didn't get a choice, that I was born this way. I was born with this gift of writing. And it seems like such a silly thing to be angry about, but remember, I was 16, 17 years old, and I didn't have enough wisdom to really appreciate the gifts that I had been given, this gift that I had been given, this gift that so many people would die to have came so naturally to me. So I decided to be somebody I wasn't. Basically, I said I wanted to work in film, and that was my passion. And I am still a lover of film. I love everything about the process of filmmaking, and I think that's one of the reasons why I stuck with it, because that's what I could relate to was the process. And I think anyone that writes and writes naturally, they know it's not about the end product. It's all about the process. And I think that's also what I was running from. For me, the process of writing is a very emotional and a very painful one. It's not something that I enjoy, so to speak. It's almost masochistic. It's not just me making up something in my head. I'm pulling from something that's already there, and I'm fleshing it out on paper, and I'm forcing myself to deal with it. And I didn't want to have to live with that for the rest of my life. So I decided to forge my own path, and there were consequences for that. I look at all the things that have happened in my life, especially the things that happened in my early 20s, and no one should ever live in regret, and I don't regret anything, but at the same time, I know things would have been a lot different had I just been obedient. had I just been honest, had I not rebelled against me. I mean, what would I have done otherwise? Honestly, if I'm being really truthful with myself, I would have gone into English education. I should have just been an English teacher. It makes the most sense, honestly, when I look back on it. I love literature and I love talking about literature and I love breaking it down and I love teaching people how to see deeper, to really read between the lines. I should have been an English teacher. I should have just sucked it up and gone to school for English education. But no, 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 no. I had to be a stubborn bull. It's interesting. This is what I know about being in a relationship with God is that God will always have his way and you can stray from his will all you want. He will always find a way to bring you back. And I encountered that multiple times. Going into film production thinking that, oh, I'm going to work on a set one day, finding out that I really don't like it. And I end up falling into writing anyway. So many opportunities at my feet that I completely ignored and dismissed because I felt like I was robbed of a choice. And it seems so ridiculous now. But today, as I was kind of just sitting and thinking about how I want the month of November to go with respect to NaNoWriMo, I remembered how I used to write poetry all the time. And I found a website years ago called postpoems.com where I actually posted all of my poetry. And pretty much everything I've ever written poetry wise is on that website. You can look for it if you want, you won't find it. I've only ever given my profile to one person and I told them they had 48 hours before I changed everything and they wouldn't be able to access it. And I kept my word. I'm very, very, very protective of what I've written. The Bible says, don't throw your pearls before swine. That's the best way I could think to describe how I feel about what I've written. I'm very protective and I don't trust it with just anyone. So you want to look for it, you can, you won't find it. And you don't even know where to start. So happy hunting. But I was just reading through all the different poems that I've written over the years. Really just poems I'd written from like 5th grade to just a few years after I graduated college, and just remembering some of the things that I had been through, the people in my life, my experiences, because that's where I think good writing comes from. A lot of people will lie to you and tell you that fiction is just fiction, it's not real, but no, it all comes from a very real place. Nothing is ever fiction. It's all autobiographical in nature. It's just disguised as a make-believe story. But just sitting there remembering some of the things I'd been through and what it took to pull some of those words out of me and put them on paper, and knowing that I'm going to have to go through that all over again in the month of November, because like I said, it's not about the end product. The end product is, and I think Stephen King described it one time, is it's dead skin. Once it's complete, it's nothing. And that's what it's always been like for me. Don't ask me about anything I've written. I couldn't tell you, because once I'm done with it, I'm done with it, and it goes off to the side, because it's not about the end product. The end product is just dead skin. It's all about the process. And that's what I was avoiding. I was avoiding going through the process, going through the pruning, going through the pain and the suffering that it takes to produce something beautiful. A flower sprouts from the ground and produces this beautiful bud. You think that that has to be a painful process. To go from seed form, to bust out of that shell, to bust forth from the ground and to grow leaves and thorns and petals, that has to be painful. And it's the same thing with writing. In order to produce something beautiful that touches millions, there's so much pain that has to go into it. And because I took so much time avoiding pain, I created pain for myself. I'm thinking just about 20 something Savannah and how ignorant she was and how naive she was and how determined she was to be her own person. And I was so fortunate to know exactly who I was. And I took that for granted. I'm kind of just talking about my behind, but I kind of wanted to share this is where I'm at in life. I am falling back into a relationship with my first love. The one thing that has always been there for me. And I know the journey that I'm about to go on the next 2 months, because October, it's all about prep, and prep looks different for everyone. Like I said, some people like to outline. I'm not very good at outlining. Me, I like to start with a character and build from there. Prep for me looks like writing small, short stories and figuring out where I want to piece them. It's writing little notes on my phone. It's creating an entire universe, an entire life for this make-believe person who's really just a piece of myself. It's about exploring things that I have been ignoring. It's about me trying to understand some of the real pain in my life right now. And then November is putting it all down and building an entire world. And I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also dreading it, because I know basically the next 2 months are going to be pruning, just straight pruning. So, to answer a couple of questions, no, I will not be sharing the product. No, I will not be sharing whatever it is I finish. No, I don't do that. If I were to ever publish anything, you would never know it was from me. I would take great care to make sure it is never attached to my real name. I don't like people in my business. I don't like people coming up to me and talking about things that are so personal. I don't deal well with compliments. I'm a weirdo that way. Not to say I don't like constructive criticism, but I am more receptive to constructive criticism from people who really do not know me. Like, they see me one time and I pass them on the street, they wouldn't recognize my face. Someone who is completely neutral in my life. It was interesting just sitting down at my desk, opening up Word, and just how easy it was to fall back into old patterns and habits, and how easy the words just kind of came out. And I haven't written anything in years. I don't even journal anymore. I haven't journaled in years. And I know as a Christian, that's really sad, because journaling is such a big thing in the Christian community. Yeah, I don't journal anymore. I don't have the patience for it or the discipline. But it's so easy. It came so naturally. No effort. And I think that's what scares me, because it feels powerful. Have you ever had those moments where you feel powerful? I think we all dream of those moments where we feel invincible and we feel powerful and we feel like nothing can stop us, nothing can touch us. And maybe it's just me, but those moments are so scary. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me pour my ridiculous heart out. It's much appreciated, as always. If you are interested in keeping up with my NaNoWriMo journey, you can head over to my Instagram. I will be posting updates. I just don't know what they'll look like or how frequent. I'm a go with the flow kind of individual, so head on over there and hang out. So, 50,000 words in the month of November. I can do it. I got halfway through in 2016. I know I can complete it. So, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.